September 1878, Colorado Territory. Cole Brennan had $8 in his pocket, one horse, and a Colt revolver at his hip. 3 graves sat behind his cabin, weathered crosses marking where his world had ended 8 years ago. The sun hung low over the mountain pass, painting the aspens gold, and Cole rode like a man with nowhere particular to be because he didn't. Home was just a place to sleep. Living was just a thing he still did, mostly out of habit. The trail wound through pine and scrub oak, cutting west toward Silverdale. Cole had spent 3 days in Denver trying to sell cattle to buyers who looked at his thin herd and thinner patience and offered prices that barely covered the ride back. He'd taken their money anyway. $8. Enough for winter supplies if he was careful, enough for whiskey if he wasn't. Maverick, his buckskin gelding, moved steady beneath him, ears forward, picking his way over rocks without being told. They'd ridden together long enough that the horse knew Cole's moods, knew when to push and when to just keep walking. Right now, walking was fine. The day was dying, but there were still 2 hours of light left, enough to make the pass before full dark. Cole's mind was empty, the way he preferred it. Empty didn't hurt. Empty didn't remember Sarah's laugh or the way Tommy used to climb on his shoulders or how little James had just started saying his name. Empty was safe. Then he saw the shape. At first, it looked like a bundle of rags someone had tossed against the base of a massive pine tree, the kind of thing travelers left behind when wagons got too heavy and choices got hard. Cole almost rode past. He'd learned long ago that stopping for every piece of discarded hope along the trail would break a man faster than bullets. But the bundle moved. Cole pulled Maverick to a halt, his hand dropping instinctively to the revolver at his hip. Out here, movement could mean anything. Injured animal. Trap. Desperate men did desperate things on lonely roads, and Cole had seen enough of human nature to trust it about as far as he could spit. He sat there for a long moment watching. The bundle shifted again, and this time he caught a glimpse of fabric, a dress, torn and dusty. Then he saw the hair, dark and matted, and beneath it a small face streaked with dirt and tears. A child. Cole's chest tightened, an old familiar ache he'd spent years trying to bury. He should keep riding. Whatever this was, it wasn't his problem. He had his own ghosts to carry. Didn't have room for anyone else's. But his hands were already moving, guiding Maverick off the trail toward the tree. As he drew closer, the details came into focus with awful clarity. A girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sat with her back pressed against the rough bark. Her legs were twisted beneath her dress in a way that made Cole's stomach turn, not from injury, but from something worse. Something permanent. One leg bent inward, the knee locked at an unnatural angle, the foot turned completely sideways. Born that way, he realized? This wasn't fresh trauma. This was a life lived different. The girl's face was burned red from the sun, her lips cracked and bleeding. She'd been crying, but there were no tears left, just dry, gasping sobs that shook her small frame. Her eyes, when they lifted to meet his, were the oldest eyes Cole had ever seen on a child, eyes that had already given up. Cole dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on pine needles. The sound made the girl flinch, but she didn't try to run. Couldn't run, he realized, looking at those twisted legs again. He crouched down a few feet away, giving her space. His shadow fell across her, offering relief from the brutal September sun that had no mercy this time of year. "You hurt?" His voice came out rough from disuse. He'd barely spoken in 3 days except to curse at cattle buyers. The girl stared at him, trying to decide if he was real or just another desert hallucination. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. She tried again. "My legs don't work right," she whispered, her voice thin as paper. "Never have." Cole nodded slowly. He could see that. What he couldn't see was why a child was alone on this trail with night coming on and no sign of wagon or campfire or any other living soul. "Where's your people?" The girl's eyes dropped. Her hands, small and dirty, twisted in the fabric of her dress. The silence stretched out, filled only with the wind moving through the pines and Maverick's steady breathing behind him. "Gone," she finally said. That one word carried more weight than a full confession. Cole had heard that tone before, had used it himself when people asked about his family. Gone. Simple. Final. A door closed and locked. "Gone where?" "Just gone." Her voice got smaller. "They said I was too slow. Said I'd die anyway, so better to leave me where God could decide instead of them having to watch." Something cracked open in Cole's chest, a place he'd thought sealed shut for good. He'd buried his sons, had stood over their graves and sworn he'd never feel that kind of pain again, had promised himself he'd never care enough about anything to hurt that deep. This wasn't his problem, wasn't his responsibility. He had $8 and a long winter coming and no business taking on anyone else's burdens. He looked at the trail stretching west, toward home. Then he looked at the girl, at those ancient eyes in that sunburned face. "What's your name?" "Emma Grace Fletcher." She said it like she was reciting something memorized, something she'd been taught to say when asked. Proper, respectful, a good girl, despite everything. "How old are you, Emma Grace Fletcher?" 9, I think, maybe still 8. "We left Missouri in the spring, and Ma said my birthday was in summer, but I don't remember which day exactly." Cole sat back on his heels, his mind working through the logistics against his better judgment. The trail behind him showed wagon tracks, recent and deep. A full wagon train had passed through here maybe 6 hours ago based on how the dust had settled. They were heading for the western settlements, chasing promises of land and fresh starts. And they'd left this child behind like unwanted furniture. "Your Ma and Pa, they just rode off?" Emma nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Pa said it wasn't personal, said they had 4 other mouths to feed, and I couldn't walk fast enough when we needed to run from Indians or wolves or bad weather." Ma cried, but she didn't stop him. Her voice got even quieter. "She left me water and some hardtack, said to pray and maybe someone kind would come along." "How long ago?" "Sun was straight up." Emma glanced at the sky, at the sun now touching the mountain peaks. "Long time." 5, maybe 6 hours, alone. A 9-year-old girl with legs that didn't work left like trash beside a tree. Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years, something hot and sharp that might have been anger if he'd let it be. He should still ride away, should tell himself this was mercy, that the girl would die quick from exposure or thirst or the mountain lions that hunted these woods at night. Nature's way, not his problem. Instead, he heard himself ask, "You got any other kin? Grandparents, aunts, or uncles?" Emma shook her head. "Just us. Pa's people all died in the war. Ma's people didn't approve of her marrying a farmer, so they stopped writing." "So nobody's looking for you?" "No, sir." Cole stood, his knees cracking, and walked back to Maverick. He pulled his canteen from the saddle and returned to Emma, unscrewing the cap. "Small sips. Your stomach's empty. You drink too fast and you'll just bring it back up." Emma took the canteen with shaking hands and drank like it was the first water she'd ever tasted. Cole watched her throat work, watched the way she forced herself to stop and breathe, even though every instinct screamed to gulp it down. Self-control, discipline. This girl had been raised with a firm hand, he could tell. Good manners beaten into her, probably literally. When she handed the canteen back, some color had returned to her face. Not much, but enough to make the resemblance hit him like a fist to the gut. She didn't look like his boys, not really, but something about the shape of her face, the way she held herself despite the fear, reminded him of Tommy. That same quiet strength, that same refusal to cry even when crying was the only thing that made sense. Cole screwed the cap back on and stared at the mountain pass ahead. 2 hours to home if he rode steady, 3 if he took it slow. He had a cabin that barely kept the wind out, a barn with 1 stall, 15 head of cattle that wouldn't make it through winter, and $8 that needed to last until spring. He didn't have room for a crippled girl with nowhere to go. He didn't have room for anything except survival. But when he looked down at Emma Grace Fletcher, at those old eyes waiting for him to ride away like everyone else had, he found himself saying something he'd never planned to say. "Can you ride?" Emma blinked, confusion crossing her face. "Sir? A horse. Can you sit a horse if I hold you steady?" "I don't know. Never tried." "Well, you're about to try now." Cole moved to her side and crouched down. "I'm going to pick you up. It's going to hurt when your legs move. You need to bite down on that and stay quiet. There's wolves in these hills, and screaming draws attention. You understand?" Emma nodded, her hands already gripping her dress tight in anticipation. Cole slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, and lifted. She was lighter than she should be, all bones and angles beneath the thin fabric of her dress. He felt her stiffen when her legs shifted, felt her bite down on a cry, but true to her word, she stayed silent. He carried her to Maverick, who stood patient as a statue, used to strange loads. Getting Emma into the saddle was awkward, her legs refusing to cooperate, but Cole managed to settle her sideways across the seat, her twisted limbs hanging to one side. "Hold on to the horn," he told her, guiding her hands to the leather knob at the front of the saddle. "I'm going to mount behind you. When I do, you lean back against me. I won't let you fall." Emma's hands gripped the saddle horn like it was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Cole swung up behind her, his arms coming around to take the reins, effectively caging her in. She was small enough that it worked, her back pressed against his chest, his arms bracketing her on both sides. Maverick shifted under the double weight but didn't protest. Good horse. The best Cole had ever owned, and he'd owned a few. "You comfortable?" Cole asked, knowing the answer, but needing to hear it anyway. "No, sir," Emma said honestly, "but I ain't uncomfortable enough to complain." Despite everything, Cole felt his mouth twitch. Might have been a smile if he still remembered how those worked. Fair enough. He turned Maverick toward home and nudged him into a walk. The sun was dropping faster now, the shadows lengthening across the trail. They had maybe an hour and a half of good light left. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady clop of hooves on dirt and stone, the creak of leather, and the evening birds starting their songs. Emma sat rigid against him at first, every muscle tense like she was afraid to relax, afraid he might change his mind if she got too comfortable. Cole understood that fear. He'd lived with it himself after Sarah and the boys died. That constant waiting for the next bad thing, the next loss, the next proof that the world was exactly as cruel as you suspected. "Where are we going?" Emma finally asked, her voice barely audible. "My place, about 2 hours north." "And then?" "And then I haven't decided yet." It was the truth. Cole had no plan beyond getting this girl somewhere safe for the night. Come morning, he'd have to figure out what to do with her. Silverdale had a church. Maybe the Reverend would know of a family willing to take in a crippled child. Or maybe there was an orphanage in Denver that handled such things. Even as he thought it, though, Cole knew it was a lie he was telling himself. He'd seen orphanages, had ridden past them in his army days, seen the hollow-eyed children standing at windows, seen what happened to the ones nobody wanted. Emma would disappear into one of those places and never come out. Or worse, she'd come out broken in ways that had nothing to do with her legs. "Are you going to leave me somewhere too?" Emma asked, and the question was so quiet, so resigned, that it hurt worse than if she'd shouted it. Cole tightened his grip on the reins, Maverick's ears flicking back at the tension in his hands. "I don't know," he said, because lying to her seemed worse than the truth. "I'm just trying to get you through tonight. Tomorrow's tomorrow." Emma nodded against his chest, accepting this. She'd learned early, it seemed, that tomorrow was all anyone could promise, if that. They rode on as the sun touched the mountains and then slipped behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and deep blue. The temperature dropped with the light, and Cole felt Emma start to shiver. He'd lost his coat in a card game 2 months back and hadn't replaced it, so he had nothing to offer her except his own body heat. "Lean back," he told her. "Take what warmth you can." Emma hesitated, then let herself relax against him. Her shivering eased slightly, though not enough. The dress she wore was summer-weight cotton, meant for hot days on the trail, not mountain evenings. Another problem for the list: food, shelter, warmth, clothing. All things Cole barely had enough of for himself. Maverick knew the way home and picked up his pace as they got closer, eager for his own dinner and rest. The last light faded from the sky, replaced by early stars and a sliver of moon that gave just enough light to see the trail. Cole's cabin appeared as a darker shape against the dark hillside, a single-room structure he'd built with his own hands 8 years ago when he'd needed something to do with his rage and grief. It wasn't much. Log walls chinked with mud, a roof that leaked in 2 places, one window with oiled paper instead of glass, and a door that didn't quite hang straight. But it had 4 walls and a fireplace, and right now, that was more than Emma Grace Fletcher had. The barn stood beside the cabin, equally rough but functional. Cole had built it first, actually, because the Army had taught him to care for your horse before yourself. A man could sleep rough, but a horse was your lifeline in country like this. He guided Maverick to the barn and dismounted, then carefully lifted Emma down. She made a small sound when her legs moved, but swallowed it back. Cole set her on a hay bale just inside the barn door, where she'd be out of the wind while he tended the horse. "Don't move," he told her, then felt stupid because where was she going to go? Emma just nodded, her hands gripping the edges of the hay bale, her eyes following his every movement. Cole unsaddled Maverick with practiced efficiency, rubbed the horse down with a handful of straw, and measured out grain from a sack that was getting too light. He'd need to ride to Silverdale in a few days to get more supplies. Add that to the list. When Maverick was settled and munching his dinner, Cole returned to Emma. She'd folded her hands in her lap and was sitting perfectly still, like a child who'd learned that being quiet and small meant being overlooked, and being overlooked meant being safe. "Can you walk at all?" Cole asked. "Even a little?" "I can drag myself if there's something to hold on to," Emma said. "My arms are strong, but it's slow." "Show me." Emma slid off the hay bale, landing on her hands and knees. Her legs sprawled uselessly behind her, but she didn't let that stop her. She crawled forward using her arms to pull herself along, her useless legs dragging in the dirt. It was painful to watch, but Cole made himself look, made himself see exactly what this girl dealt with every day of her life. After a few feet, Emma stopped and looked back at him, waiting for judgment. "That's good," Cole said, and meant it. "That's real good, but I'm going to carry you to the cabin because it's faster and you're already worn out." He scooped her up again, and this time Emma didn't tense. She just let herself be carried, her head resting against his shoulder with a trust that felt like a weight heavier than her body. The cabin was cold and dark inside. Cole deposited Emma on the single chair he owned, a rickety thing he'd traded for last winter, and went about building a fire. He had the routine down to muscle memory. Kindling first, then small sticks, then logs. A spark from his flint and steel, a breath of encouragement, and flames began to lick upward. Light and warmth spread through the small space, revealing the poverty of Cole's existence. A rough table he'd made from pine planks, the chair Emma sat in, a bedroll in the corner, a few tin plates and cups, a coffee pot. Not much else, no photographs, no mementos, nothing that remembered the life he'd had before. Emma looked around with interest, but no judgment. She'd grown up poor, he could tell. This cabin was probably better than some places she'd slept. "You hungry?" Cole asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir." He had beans and a little salt pork. He put them together in his single pot with some water from the bucket by the door and hung it over the fire. While it heated, he found his other blanket, a thin wool thing with holes, and wrapped it around Emma's shoulders. She pulled it tight and watched him move around the cabin with the same intensity she'd watched everything since he found her. like she was memorizing details in case she needed them later, in case this was just another temporary stop before the next abandonment. "I need to ask you something," Cole said, settling on the floor in front of the fire since Emma had his only chair. "This man in the black coat you mentioned, who is he?" Emma's face went pale, the firelight making the shadows under her eyes darker. "I saw him twice, once in Kansas City when we were buying supplies. He was talking to some men about children, about needing workers for mines and factories, said he'd pay good money for orphans or kids whose families didn't want them." Cole's jaw tightened. He'd heard of such men. Labor contractors, they called themselves. Slavers in everything but name. "You saw him again?" "3 days ago. He rode past our wagon at night. Pa talked to him for a long time. The next morning, Pa started talking about how I was too much burden, how we couldn't keep hauling dead weight across country, how maybe it was God's will that I stay behind." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "Your pa sold you?" Emma's voice was small. "I think so. I think that man paid Pa to leave me where he could come back and get me, but cheap, because I can't work as good as normal kids." "What's this man look like besides the black coat?" "Tall, gray beard, real clean like he takes baths regular, scar across his left cheek. And he had papers in his coat, official looking, with seals." Cole committed every detail to memory. If this man came looking for Emma, Cole wanted to be able to recognize him before he got too close. The beans bubbled over, hissing into the fire. Cole grabbed a rag and moved the pot to the side, letting it cool enough to eat. He had 2 tin plates, both dented, and he divided the food evenly between them. It wasn't much, wasn't nearly enough for a growing child, but it was what he had. Emma ate slowly, methodically, making each bite last. Cole recognized that behavior too. She'd been hungry before, had learned to make small portions feel like feasts through sheer force of will and imagination. When the food was gone, Emma set her plate down carefully. "Thank you. It's just beans. It's more than I had an hour ago." Cole took the plates to the bucket, rinsing them with cold water that made his hands ache. When he turned back, he found Emma trying to stay awake, her eyes drifting shut and then snapping open, fighting sleep like it was an enemy. "You can sleep," he told her. "Nothing's going to happen to you tonight." "Where should I sleep?" Cole looked around the cabin. 1 bedroll, 1 blanket currently wrapped around Emma. No spare anything. "The bedroll's yours," he said. "I'll sit by the fire." "That's not right. It's your bed. I've slept worse places. Trust me." He spread the bedroll near the fire, close enough for warmth, but not so close that a spark would catch it. Emma watched him, then looked at the bedroll, then back at him. "You could share it," she said quietly. "It's big enough for both of us, if we don't mind being close. And it's cold." Cole froze. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that appearances mattered, that a man alone with a child would draw exactly the kind of attention he didn't need. But another part of him, the part that remembered being a father, remembered cold nights when his boys would crawl into bed between him and Sarah, seeking warmth and comfort. Emma wasn't trying to be inappropriate. She was trying to survive, trying to find whatever warmth and safety she could in a world that had given her precious little of either. "All right," Cole said, "but you stay on your side and I stay on mine." "Yes, sir." Cole helped Emma to the bedroll, arranging her carefully so her twisted legs wouldn't cramp during the night. She curled on her side, the blanket pulled up to her chin, watching him with that steady, unblinking gaze. He lay down on his back, as far to the other side of the bedroll as he could get, staring up at the rough log ceiling. The fire crackled. Wind whispered against the walls. And between one breath and the next, he heard Emma's breathing even out into sleep. Cole lay awake for a long time listening to her breathe, thinking about the choice he'd made on that trail. $8 in his pocket, a long winter coming. And now a crippled girl who someone wanted badly enough to pay for. He should take her to Silverdale tomorrow, should hand her over to the church and wash his hands of the whole situation. But even as he thought it, Cole knew he wouldn't. couldn't. Because somewhere between finding her beneath that tree and carrying her to this cabin, between watching her crawl with dignity and seeing her fight sleep like it might steal her away, Emma Grace Fletcher had stopped being a stranger's problem. She'd become his. And Cole Brennan, who'd sworn he'd never care about anything again, who'd built walls around his heart high enough to keep out the whole damn world, found those walls cracking under the weight of one simple truth. He couldn't save his sons, but maybe, just maybe, he could save her. The fire burned low, the stars wheeled overhead, and in a cabin in the Colorado mountains, a broken man and a broken child slept side by side, neither of them knowing yet that they'd just found what they'd both been missing. Morning came cold and gray. The kind of dawn that promised winter wasn't far behind. Cole woke to the smell of ash and the sound of wind pushing against the cabin walls. For a moment he forgot where he was, forgot about the warmth pressed against his side. Then memory returned in a rush. Emma. She was still asleep, curled into a tight ball with the blanket wrapped around her like a cocoon. Sometime during the night she'd moved closer to him, seeking warmth. Her face was peaceful in sleep, younger than her waking hours allowed her to be. Cole extracted himself carefully, not wanting to wake her. She'd earned whatever rest she could get. He added wood to the fire, coaxing it back to life, then pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The world was silver with frost, every blade of grass crystallized, every surface sparkling in the weak morning light. His breath came out in white puffs. Winter was coming early this year. He could feel it in his bones, in the way the wind cut through his shirt. He walked to the barn to check on a Maverick and found the horse stamping impatiently, ready for breakfast. Cole measured out grain, then stood for a moment with his hand on the horse's warm neck, thinking, what was he going to do with Emma? The practical answer was obvious. Take her to town, find someone to care for her, get back to his life of quiet survival. But the practical answer didn't account for the way she'd looked at him last night when he'd promised her one more day. Didn't account for the trust in her eyes when she'd let him carry her. Didn't account for the fact that for the first time in 8 years, Cole had slept through the night without dreaming of graves and crosses and everything he'd lost. He was still standing there, lost in thought, when he heard a sound from the cabin. A thump, then a scraping noise. Cole hurried back to find Emma on the floor, dragging herself toward the door. "What are you doing?" Emma froze, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I need the privy. Didn't want to wake you." Cole felt something twist in his chest. This girl, who could barely move, was trying to handle things on her own rather than be a burden. He crossed to her and lifted her without a word, carrying her outside to the small outhouse he'd built behind the cabin. "I'll wait here," he said, setting her down near the door. "Call when you're done." It took longer than it should have, but Emma managed. Cole heard her struggling inside, heard the frustration in her breathing, but she didn't ask for help. When she finally called out, he found her sitting on the ground, having dragged herself out, her face red from exertion. "You did good," Cole said, and he meant it. "I'm slow. You're determined. There's a difference." He carried her back inside and set her in the chair. The fire was burning strong now, taking the chill off the air. Cole put coffee on to boil and found the last of his cornmeal, mixing it with water to make Johnny cakes. Emma watched him work with that same intense focus. "You don't have to feed me. I can make do with less." "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Emma thought about it. "Week ago, maybe. Ma made stew when we camped near a creek and Pa shot a rabbit." A week. This child had been slowly starving, and her family had left her anyway. Cole flipped the Johnny cakes, his jaw tight. "You'll eat what I give you and not argue about it." "Yes, sir." They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the scrape of tin on tin. Cole watched Emma eat every bite, watched the way she savored each mouthful like it might be her last, which for all she knew, it might be. When breakfast was done, Cole poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "I need to go into town today, get supplies. Figure some things out." Emma's face went carefully blank. "Are you taking me to the church?" "I don't know yet, because I understand if you are. You didn't ask for this, didn't ask for me." Cole set his cup down harder than he meant to. "Stop that." "Stop what?" "Stop making it easy for people to give up on you. Stop acting like you don't matter." Emma's eyes widened, then filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm just trying not to be trouble." "Well, you're already trouble. Question is what kind of trouble I'm willing to take on." It came out harsher than he meant, but Emma didn't flinch. Instead, something like hope flickered across her face. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't planning to abandon her at the first opportunity. Cole stood and walked to the window, looking out at the frost-covered landscape. "If you stay here, even for a little while, there's going to be talk. People in town, they'll wonder, they'll ask questions." "What will you tell them?" "The truth. That I found you on the trail and brought you here until we figure out what's next." "And if that man comes? The one in the black coat?" Cole's hand dropped to his hip to where his revolver would be once he strapped it on. "Then he'll have to go through me." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Why are you helping me?" It was the question Cole had been avoiding since he'd picked her up yesterday. Why was he helping her? He had no good answer, no logical reason. Just a feeling in his gut that said this was something he had to do. "I had sons once," he said finally. "Tommy was 7 when he died. James was 4. Their mother too. Indian raid while I was away scouting. Came home to find my whole world gone." "I'm sorry." "I spent 8 years telling myself I didn't want to care about anything ever again. Easier that way. Safer." He turned to look at her. "Then I found you under that tree, and all those walls I built didn't mean a damn thing." Emma's voice was soft. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not. But I owe my boys, owe Sarah. They'd want me to do better than I have been. And maybe helping you is how I start." A knock on the door interrupted them. Cole's hand went to his revolver in one smooth motion, old cavalry instincts taking over. Emma shrank back in her chair. "Cole? It's Gideon. Saw your smoke. Wanted to check you made it back all right." Cole relaxed and opened the door. Gideon Hart stood on the threshold, a man of 60, with a weathered face and kind eyes. He'd been Cole's neighbor for 5 years, giving him space when he needed it, company when he could stand it. Gideon's eyes went from Cole to Emma and back again. "Well, wasn't expecting company. Found her on the trail yesterday. Someone left her to die." Gideon stepped inside, closing the door against the cold. He crouched down to Emma's level, not hovering, just making himself less threatening. "What's your name, child?" "Emma Grace Fletcher, sir." "Well, Miss Emma Grace Fletcher, I'm Gideon Hart. I ranch about 2 miles south of here." He glanced at her legs, then back at her face without a flicker of pity or disgust. "Looks like you've had a rough go of it." "Yes, sir." Gideon stood and looked at Cole. "You planning to keep her?" "Haven't decided." "Well, when you do decide, you'll need more than beans and cornmeal. I've got extra supplies at my place, blankets too. My wife's things from before she passed. They've just been sitting in a trunk these 10 years. Cole felt something ease in his chest. "I'd appreciate that." "I'll bring them by later." Gideon tipped his hat to Emma. "Nice to meet you, miss. Cole here's a good man, even if he's forgotten how to act like one. You're in safe hands." After Gideon left, Emma looked at Cole. "He seems nice." "He is. Only friend I've got left, and I don't deserve him." "Maybe you deserve more than you think." Cole didn't answer that. Instead, he helped Emma into her blanket and carried her out to the barn. If she was going to be here even a few more days, she needed to see more than just the inside of his cabin. The barn was warmer than outside, the smell of hay and horse familiar and comforting. Cole set Emma on a hay bale and went to check Maverick's water. The horse nickered softly, pushing his nose against Cole's chest. "That's Maverick," Cole said. "Had him 6 years. Best horse I've ever owned." Emma watched the horse with interest. "Can I touch him?" "You afraid of horses?" Never been close enough to one to know. Cole led Maverick over to Emma's hay bale. The horse was gentle, well-trained, and he stood still as Emma reached out a tentative hand. Her fingers touched his nose, and Maverick whuffled softly, his breath warm against her palm. Emma's face lit up in a smile so bright it transformed her. He's soft. That's velvet. All horses have it on their noses. She stroked Maverick's face with wonder, and the horse stood patient, as if he understood this was important. Cole watched them, watched the way Emma's whole body relaxed, the way the fear and tension melted away. "I like horses," Emma said softly. "Horses are better than people most of the time." "Do you have any other animals?" 15 head of cattle out in the far pasture. Few chickens, but a fox got most of them last month. Emma kept petting Maverick, her movements gentle and sure. "Back home, before we left Missouri, we had a dog. His name was Buddy. Pa shot him before we left because he said we couldn't take him west." The casual way she said it, like it was just another loss in a life full of them, made Cole's hands clench. That was wrong of him. Pa said it was practical, said Buddy would just slow us down or run off anyway. Your pa sounds like a man who confused practical with cruel. Emma didn't argue, just kept petting the horse. They stayed in the barn for a while, Emma content to be near Maverick, Cole doing small chores and trying not to think too hard about what he was getting himself into. Eventually, he carried her back inside and settled her by the fire. "I need to ride into Silverdale," he said. "Get supplies. Talk to some people." Fear flashed across Emma's face. "Are you coming back?" "Yes." "Promise?" Cole crouched down to her level. "I promise. I'll be gone maybe 4 hours. Gideon's going to come by with those supplies he mentioned. You'll be safe here." "What if that man comes, the one in the black coat?" "He won't. Not yet. And if he does, you hide in the barn. There's a space behind the hay where you can crawl. Don't come out until you hear my voice. Understand?" Emma nodded, but her hands were shaking. Cole went to his bedroll and pulled out a small knife, nothing fancy, just a blade he'd carried since his army days. "You know how to use one of these?" "Pa taught me to cut vegetables." "It'll cut more than vegetables if you need it to. Keep this with you. Anyone tries to take you, you fight. Doesn't matter if they're bigger or stronger. You fight until you can't fight anymore." He pressed the knife into her hand, and Emma's fingers closed around it. "I'll fight," she said quietly. Cole saddled Maverick and prepared to leave, but at the door he turned back. Emma sat in the chair wrapped in her blanket, holding his knife like it was the only solid thing in the world. "I'll be back," he said again. "I know." But the doubt in her eyes said otherwise, said she'd heard promises before, said she knew how easy it was for people to ride away and never return. Cole climbed into the saddle and pointed Maverick toward Silverdale, his mind already working through what he needed to do. Buy supplies. Talk to the Reverend, maybe, about families who might take in a child. Ask around about men in black coats buying children. Figure out what the hell he was going to do with Emma Grace Fletcher. The ride to Silverdale took an hour and a half, and with every mile, Cole felt the weight of his decision pressing down. He was getting attached, already starting to think of Emma as something more than a problem to solve. That was dangerous. Attachment led to loss, and loss led to the kind of pain he'd sworn never to feel again. But when he thought about leaving her at the church, thought about riding away and never seeing her again, something in his chest rebelled. Maybe he was already too late. Maybe the attachment had formed the moment he'd seen her under that tree, old eyes in a young face waiting to die. Maybe some things you couldn't run from, no matter how hard you tried. Silverdale appeared ahead, a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a main street. The town was small, maybe 200 people when everyone was home, but it had the basics: general store, saloon, church, sheriff's office, courthouse. Cole tied Maverick outside the general store and went inside. The proprietor, a thin man named Wesley, who talked too much and charged too little, looked up from his counter. "Cole Brennan, haven't seen you in weeks. Heard you went to Denver." "Just got back." Cole pulled out his $8. Need supplies, flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, whatever this will buy. Wesley counted the money and started pulling items from shelves. This'll get you through maybe 3 weeks if you're careful. Make it last longer. I can add more beans, less meat. Do that. While Wesley worked, Cole looked around the store. His eye caught on a display of children's clothing, small dresses and shoes. He thought of Emma's torn dress, her bare feet. That dress there, he said, pointing to a simple blue one, and shoes, small for a girl maybe 9 years old. Wesley raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. He added the items to the pile. That'll be $10 total. I only have 8. Then you can't buy the dress and shoes. Cole stared at the items, doing math in his head. Food or clothing, survival or comfort. It shouldn't be a question. Just the food then, he said. Wesley nodded and wrapped the supplies in brown paper. Cole was loading them into his saddlebags when a voice stopped him cold. "Mr. Brennan, a word if you please." Cole turned to find a tall man in a black coat standing behind him, gray beard, scar on his left cheek, papers visible in his coat pocket. The man from Emma's description. Cyrus Dane smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Cole's hand moved to his hip before his mind caught up. The weight of the Colt was there, familiar and ready. But drawing iron on a crowded street in broad daylight was a good way to end up in a cell, or worse. So he kept his hand loose, hovering, ready but not committed. "I don't believe we've met," Cole said, his voice flat as creekstone. Cyrus Dane's smile widened, showing teeth too white for a man who spent his time on dusty trails. "No, but I know you, Mr. Brennan, former cavalry scout, widower, living alone on that pathetic excuse for a ranch 2 hours north of here." He paused, letting the words sink in, and now, apparently, harboring stolen property. "I don't know what you're talking about. The girl, Emma Fletcher. Her father sold her to me, legal and proper. I have the papers to prove it." Dane pulled a folded document from his coat, crisp and official-looking. "Now, I'm a reasonable man. I understand you probably didn't know the situation when you picked her up. So I'm willing to overlook this little misunderstanding if you just tell me where she is." Cole's jaw tightened. Every instinct told him to put his fist through this man's smiling face, but that would solve nothing. Not yet. "Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not saying it is, a father can't sell his child. That's slavery. Been illegal for 13 years. Dane's laugh was smooth as oil. "Slavery? No, this is guardianship transfer, perfectly legal. The girl's family couldn't care for her, poor things. I agreed to take responsibility, provide her with work and shelter. It's charity, really. Charity that her father got paid for. A small administrative fee, nothing more." Around them people were starting to notice. Wesley stood in the doorway of his store watching. A woman across the street had stopped sweeping. The sheriff's office was 3 buildings down, and Cole could see movement in the window. This was exactly what Dane wanted, a public confrontation. Witnesses to see Cole refusing a legal claim. Everything proper and above board, except for the rot underneath. "The girl's at my place," Cole said carefully, "safe and fed. If you want to discuss this further, we can ride out there together. Let her tell us herself what she wants." Dane's eyes went hard. "The girl is 9 years old and crippled. What she wants is irrelevant. I have legal guardianship. Then you'll have no problem coming to my ranch and proving it." "I don't need to prove anything to you, Mr. Brennan. I need you to return my property. Today." The word property hung in the air like gun smoke. Cole felt something cold settle in his gut. This wasn't going to end with words. Men like Dane didn't back down when they had the law on their side, even if that law was bought and paid for. "No," Cole said simply. Dane's smile vanished. "That's theft. I could have you arrested." "Then do it. I'll tell the sheriff exactly what you're running. Child labor. Probably selling kids to mines and factories. Maybe he'll be interested in those papers of yours." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Dane's face. Then it was gone, replaced by something colder. Sheriff Wade is a friend of mine. Good friend. He understands how things work in this territory. Of course he did. Cole should have known. Small town, limited law, plenty of room for men with money and influence to bend things their way. "We're done talking," Cole said. He turned back to Maverick, loading the last of his supplies. Dane's hand shot out, gripping Cole's shoulder. "We're done when I say we're done." Cole moved on instinct. He grabbed Dane's wrist, twisted, and had the man bent over Maverick's saddle in less than a heartbeat. Old cavalry training, muscle memory from a life he'd tried to leave behind. "Touch me again," Cole said quietly, "and you'll pull back a stump." He released Dane, who stumbled back, his face red with rage and embarrassment. People were definitely watching now. This would be all over town by nightfall. "You just made a very serious mistake," Dane said, straightening his coat. "Judge Blackwood will hear about this. You can expect legal action." Looking forward to it, Cole mounted Maverick and turned north without another word. Behind him, he heard Dane calling out threats, but the words blurred together. All that mattered was getting back to Emma. Getting back before Dane could organize whatever response he was planning. The ride home felt twice as long as it should have. Every shadow looked like a rider, every sound like hoofbeats. Cole pushed Maverick harder than he liked, but the horse seemed to understand the urgency. When the cabin finally came into view, Cole's heart was hammering. Smoke rose from the chimney, no sign of trouble, no strange horses. He dismounted at a run, pushing through the door. Emma sat exactly where he'd left her, wrapped in her blanket, his knife clutched in both hands. Her face flooded with relief when she saw him. "You came back." "Told you I would." Cole crossed to her, his hands shaking slightly from adrenaline and fear he hadn't wanted to name. "We need to talk. Something happened in town." He told her about Dane, about the papers, about the sheriff being bought, and the judge likely being in on it too. Emma's face went pale, then gray, then white as fresh snow. "He's really coming for me," she whispered. "He already tried, but I sent him away. For now." "You should have given me to him." Cole crouched down so they were eye level. "Listen to me. I don't care what papers that man has. I don't care who he knows or who he's paid off. You're not going anywhere with him. You understand? But the law can be wrong. And when it is, sometimes you have to do what's right anyway. Consequences be damned." Emma searched his face. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're brave and smart and deserve better than being sold to work in some mine shaft until you die." He paused. "And I know that my boys would want me to fight for you. So that's what I'm going to do." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks, the first real tears he'd seen from her. Not the dry sobs of dehydration and despair, but genuine emotion finally breaking through. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too. But we're going to get through this." A knock at the door made them both jump. Cole's hand went to his revolver as he moved to answer it, but it was just Gideon, his arms full of bundles. "Brought those supplies I mentioned," Gideon said, then caught sight of their faces. "What happened?" Cole let him in and explained while Gideon unpacked. There were blankets, thick and warm, dresses in various sizes, all clean and carefully folded, shoes, a coat, things Gideon's wife had worn before consumption took her. Mary would have wanted them to go to someone who needed them, Gideon said, his voice rough with old grief. "Emma, you wear them in good health." "Thank you, sir," Emma said quietly. Gideon turned to Cole. "This Dane character. He's going to come back, and he won't come alone." "I know." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not giving her up." Gideon nodded slowly. "Then you'll need help. Can't fight the whole territory by yourself." "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Gideon's jaw set in a line Cole recognized. Stubbornness, loyalty, the kind of man who'd stand beside you even when the smart play was to walk away. "We'll figure this out. But first, the girl needs proper clothes and a decent meal. Mary's things should fit her well enough. They spent the afternoon making the cabin more livable. Gideon helped Cole string a rope across one corner to create a private space for Emma. They hung blankets to form a makeshift wall, giving her somewhere to change and sleep with dignity. Emma tried on the dresses. The blue one fit best, falling to her ankles, the sleeves a little long but workable. She looked at herself in the reflection of Cole's shaving mirror, touching the fabric with wonder. "I've never had anything this nice," she said. "It suits you," Cole told her. For dinner, they had the beans and salt pork Cole had bought, along with cornbread Gideon contributed. It was the most food Emma had seen in weeks, and she ate until her stomach hurt, then apologized for being greedy. "That's not greed," Gideon said kindly. "That's your body telling you it needs fuel. You eat as much as you want." After dinner, Gideon left with promises to check in tomorrow. Cole barred the door behind him and added extra wood to the fire. The temperature was dropping fast. Winter was definitely coming early. Emma sat in her private corner, running her fingers over the extra blankets. "Mr. Brennan?" "Just Cole." "Mr. Brennan makes me feel old." "Cole, then, what's going to happen when that judge gets involved?" Cole had been thinking about that all afternoon. "Depends on what kind of judge he is. If he's honest, we might have a chance. If he's bought like the sheriff, we'll need a different plan." "What kind of plan?" "The kind where we find someone higher up the chain, federal marshal maybe, someone who can't be bullied or bribed." "Do you know anyone like that?" Cole was quiet for a moment. He did know someone, Colonel Thaddeus Grant, now a U.S. Marshal based out of Denver. They'd served together in the cavalry, fought side by side through some of the worst campaigns of the Indian Wars. Grant was one of the few men Cole trusted completely. "I might," he said, "but getting word to him will take time, and I don't know how much time we have." That night Cole barely slept. He kept his revolver within reach and listened to every sound outside. Wind in the trees, coyotes in the distance, Maverick shifting in the barn. Nothing that suggested riders approaching, but he stayed alert anyway. Emma slept fitfully, whimpering in her dreams. Twice Cole went to her, speaking softly until she settled. The second time, she grabbed his hand and held on tight, even in sleep. Morning came with heavy clouds and the smell of snow in the air. Cole made coffee and checked his ammunition. 6 rounds in the Colt. A box of 20 more in his saddlebag. Not much if things turned violent, but hopefully enough. He was frying eggs when hoofbeats sounded outside. Multiple horses. Cole's hand dropped to his gun, but then he heard Gideon's voice. "Cole, got company!" Cole opened the door to find Gideon with 2 other men. One was Doc Morrison, the town physician, a gray-haired man with steady hands and a kind face. The other was a woman Cole recognized as Rebecca Chen, the schoolteacher who'd come west from California 5 years back. "What's this?" Cole asked. "This is us deciding we're not going to let Cyrus Dane and his friends run roughshod over a child," Rebecca said firmly. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but she had a spine of steel. "Gideon told us what happened. We want to help," Doc Morrison nodded. "I've been hearing rumors about Dane for months, children disappearing, families being paid off. Never had proof, but if Emma can testify to what happened to her, it might be enough to start an investigation." "Judge Blackwood won't allow it," Cole said. "Then we go over his head. Rebecca's cousin works in the territorial governor's office. We send word to him." It was the beginning of a plan. Not a great one, but better than nothing. They spent the morning gathering information. Emma told her story to Doc Morrison, who wrote down every detail with the careful precision of a man who understood that words would matter more than bullets in this fight. Rebecca asked questions, gentle but thorough. "Where did your family come from? How much did your father receive? What exactly did Dane say to you?" Emma answered everything, her voice growing stronger with each word. By noon, they had 3 handwritten pages of testimony. Doc Morrison signed it as a witness. So did Rebecca and Gideon. "This is good," Rebecca said. "But we need more. We need other families willing to come forward. They'll be scared, Gideon said. Most of these folks are desperate. That's why they sold their kids in the first place. Then we make them understand they're not alone, that there's strength in numbers. Cole listened to them plan, grateful and uncomfortable in equal measure. He wasn't used to people helping, wasn't used to being part of something bigger than his own survival. Emma sat nearby, watching with wide eyes. "You're all doing this for me?" "We're doing this because it's right," Rebecca said. "And because if we let men like Dane operate in the shadows, we're no better than the people who look the other way." They were still talking when the sound of hoofbeats interrupted them again. This time, it wasn't friends. Sheriff Tom Wade rode up with 3 deputies, all armed. Behind them came Cyrus Dane, looking smug and satisfied. Cole stepped outside, positioning himself between them and the cabin. Gideon, Doc Morrison, and Rebecca followed, forming a loose line. Wade dismounted slowly. He was a big man, running to fat, with a face that had seen too much whiskey and too little sleep. "Cole Brennan, need to have a word." "We can talk from there." "Official business. Judge Blackwood sent me with a court order." Wade pulled a paper from his coat. "Says here I'm to take custody of one Emma Grace Fletcher and deliver her to the legal guardian, Mr. Cyrus Dane." "That order's not worth the paper it's written on," Rebecca said. "Emma's father had no right to sell her. That's for the judge to decide, not you." Wade's eyes swept over the group. "Doc, Miss Chen, Gideon, you folks need to step aside. This doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't," Gideon said. Wade's hand dropped to his gun. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Cole kept his voice level. "That girl's been abused and abandoned. She needs medical care and proper placement, not to be handed over to a labor contractor. Mr. Dane here has legal guardianship. I've seen the papers, all proper and filed with the territorial court." "Papers can be forged," Dane spoke up, his voice oily with false concern. "I assure you, everything is legitimate. The girl's father signed her over to me because he couldn't provide for her special needs. I run a facility specifically for children with disabilities. She'll receive excellent care." It was a beautiful lie, smooth and practiced. If Cole hadn't known better, he might have almost believed it. "What facility?" Doc Morrison asked. "I've never heard of such a place in this territory. It's private, funded by charitable donations." "Then you won't mind if I inspect it." Dane's smile tightened. "That won't be necessary." "I think it will be. In fact, I think we should all ride over there right now and see these excellent accommodations you're describing." Wade cut in. "This is wasting time. I have a court order. I'm taking the girl." "Over my dead body," Cole said quietly. The words hung in the air, 4 guns on one side, Cole's Colt on the other, with Gideon probably armed as well. The math wasn't good. Wade's face hardened. "That can be arranged." "Sheriff?" Rebecca's voice cut through the tension. "Before you do something you'll regret, you should know that we've already sent word to the territorial governor about Mr. Dane's activities. We have testimony from Emma, and we're gathering statements from other families. If anything happens to this child or to Cole Brennan, you'll be answering to federal authorities." It was a bluff mostly. They'd written the letter but hadn't sent it yet. But Wade didn't know that. The sheriff hesitated, uncertainty crossing his face. He might be bought, but he wasn't stupid. Federal investigation would bring scrutiny he couldn't afford. Dane saw the hesitation, and his voice sharpened. "Sheriff Wade, the court order." I know." Wade shifted his weight. "Look, Brennan, I don't want trouble. Just hand over the girl and we can all go home." "No." "Then I'll have to arrest you for obstruction." "You could try." Gideon stepped forward. "You'll have to arrest all of us then, because we're all obstructing." Doc Morrison nodded. "I'll testify that the girl needs medical care before any custody transfer." Rebecca crossed her arms. "And I'll testify about the law regarding child welfare." Wade looked at his deputies. They looked back, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. None of them had signed up to forcibly remove a crippled child from people trying to protect her. The standoff stretched on. Cole's hand hovered near his gun. Wade's fingers drummed on his belt. Dane's face grew redder with each passing second. Finally, Wade stepped back. "This isn't over. I'll be back with more men and a federal warrant if I have to." "You do that," Cole said. "And Brennan, you're making powerful enemies. Judge Blackwood doesn't forget." "Neither do I." Wade and his deputies mounted up. Dane lingered, his eyes locked on Cole with pure hatred. "Enjoy your time with her," Dane said softly. "It's running out." They rode away, leaving dust and threat hanging in the air. Rebecca let out a breath she'd been holding. That was close. "Too close," Doc Morrison agreed. "We need to actually send that letter now, and we need to find more families willing to testify." "I'll start asking around," Gideon said, quietly. "If Blackwood gets wind of it, he'll shut us down fast." Cole felt the weight of what he'd started pressing down on him. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about exposing corruption that ran deep through the territory. Men with power didn't give it up easy. Inside the cabin, Emma sat huddled in her blanket, her face white with fear. She'd heard everything through the thin walls. "They're going to take me," she said. Cole knelt in front of her. "Not if I can help it." "But the judge, the sheriff, all those men, how can you fight them all?" "Same way you fight anything. One step at a time, one day at a time. I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "Too late. I'm already in this." He took her hands. "Emma, I need you to understand something. When I found you under that tree, I was just going through the motions of living. Eating, sleeping, breathing, but not really alive. You changed that. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond my own pain." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm just a burden." "You're not a burden. You're a reason. A reason to get up in the morning. A reason to fight. A reason to be the man I used to be before grief hollowed me out." Emma threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. Cole held her, this small broken girl who'd somehow started putting him back together. That evening, after Emma fell asleep, Cole sat by the fire writing a letter. His handwriting was rough, unpracticed, but he forced the words out anyway. "Colonel Grant, it's been 8 years. I know you probably thought I was dead, and in a lot of ways I was. But something's happened that's brought me back to the world of the living, and I need your help." He explained everything: Emma, Dane, Blackwood, the corruption and the threat. He ended with a simple plea. "I'm asking you to come. Not as a soldier, not as a marshal, but as a friend. I saved your life once at Adobe Walls. Now I'm asking you to help me save hers." He sealed the letter and gave it to Gideon the next morning to post from the next town over where Blackwood's influence didn't reach. "How long until he could get here?" Gideon asked. 5 days if he rides hard. 10 if he takes his time. And until then, we hold the line. The next 3 days passed in tense waiting. Cole kept Emma close, teaching her things to pass the time: how to clean a gun, how to read tracks, how to tell direction by the stars. Skills his boys had never gotten old enough to learn. Emma soaked it all in, her mind quick and hungry for knowledge. She asked questions constantly, pushed herself to try things even when her legs made them difficult. On the 4th day, she asked to see the barn again. Specifically, she wanted to see Maverick. Cole carried her out and set her on a hay bale while he worked. Emma watched the horse with fascination. "Could I learn to ride?" she asked. "Your legs don't work the way they need to for traditional riding, but there might be another way." Cole thought about it. He'd seen wounded soldiers ride with modified saddles and equipment. It was possible, maybe. "We'd need special tack, a saddle that would hold you secure without needing leg strength. Could you make one?" "I could try." Emma's face lit up. "Really?" "Can't promise it'll work, but I can try." He spent that evening sketching designs while Emma watched, offering suggestions. She was smarter than most adults he knew, seeing problems and solutions with clarity. They were deep in discussion about stirrup modifications when hoofbeats sounded outside. Cole's hand went to his gun, but then a familiar voice called out, "Cole Brennan, you in there?" Cole opened the door to find a man in a dark coat with a silver star on his chest. Tall, broad-shouldered, with gray threading through dark hair and eyes that had seen every kind of hell and come out harder for it. "Grant," Cole breathed. "Got your letter 5 days ago, rode straight through, changed horses twice." Colonel Thaddeus Grant, now U.S. Marshal, stepped inside and his eyes found Emma. His expression softened. "This the girl you wrote about?" "Emma Grace Fletcher. Meet Marshal Thaddeus Grant. He's the closest thing to a real lawman you're going to find in this territory." Grant removed his hat. "Pleasure, miss." Emma's voice was small. "You came all this way for me?" "Came for Cole. But I'd say you're worth the ride." Grant turned to Cole. "Tell me everything." They talked long into the night. Grant took notes, asked questions, his mind working through the legal angles. By midnight, he'd formed a plan. Blackwood's jurisdiction is territorial, but child trafficking crosses state lines. That makes it federal. I can arrest Dane and anyone working with him, but I need evidence, hard evidence. "We have Emma's testimony," Cole said. "Good start. But we need more. Other children, financial records, proof of the mine operations." "How do we get that?" Grant's smile was cold. "We go to the source. Tomorrow we ride to Dane's facility. Wherever it is, we find it and we document everything." "That's dangerous." "More dangerous than waiting for Blackwood to manufacture some legal excuse to take Emma? At least this way, we're on offense." Cole looked at Emma, sleeping in her corner, trusting them to protect her. "All right," he said. "We do this your way." Grant clapped him on the shoulder. "Good, because tomorrow we're going to war." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, soft and silent, covering the world in white. Inside the cabin, 2 old soldiers planned their battle, fighting not for territory or glory, but for one small girl who'd reminded them both what honor really meant. And in the morning, everything would change. They would ride to Dane's mine, gather evidence, and expose the rot at the heart of the territory, or they would die trying. Dawn broke cold and clear, the new snow-reflecting sunlight like scattered diamonds across the mountain landscape. Cole stood in the doorway of his cabin, watching Marshal Grant check his weapons with the methodical precision of a man who'd done it 1,000 times before. 2 revolvers, a rifle, extra ammunition. Everything clean, everything ready. Emma sat wrapped in her blankets, her eyes wide with worry. She hadn't slept much. None of them had. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "You could just take me somewhere far away. Start over." Cole turned to look at her. "Running doesn't solve problems, just postpones them, and men like Dane don't stop until someone makes them." "But what if something happens to you?" "Then Grant will finish what we started." Cole crossed to her and knelt down. "Emma, I need you to be brave today. Gideon's going to stay here with you. Doc Morrison and Rebecca are coming too. You'll be safe." "I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you." Something warm spread through Cole's chest. When was the last time someone had worried about him? Really worried, not out of obligation or pity, but genuine care. "I'll be careful," he promised. Grant spoke up from the doorway. "We should move. Want to hit the mine before full light gives us away." The mine. Grant had spent yesterday tracking down information, talking to miners in Silverdale's saloon, following leads. He'd discovered that Dane's operation was 20 miles east, hidden in a canyon where the territorial authorities rarely ventured. A silver mine that had played out years ago, now repurposed for something darker. Gideon arrived as Cole was saddling Maverick. The old rancher carried his hunting rifle and a grim expression. "Wish I was going with you," Gideon said. "Need you here more. If we don't come back, you get Emma to Denver, to the federal courthouse. Tell them everything." It won't come to that. But if it does," Gideon nodded, "I'll protect her with my life." Cole gripped his friend's shoulder, then mounted up. Grant was already in the saddle, his horse dancing with nervous energy. They rode out as the sun cleared the peaks, heading east into country Cole didn't know well. The first hour passed in silence. Both men were comfortable with quiet, having spent years in the cavalry where words were often wasted breath. They rode alert, eyes scanning the landscape for threats, hands never far from weapons. Grant finally spoke as they descended into a valley thick with pine. "You've changed." "How so?" 8 years ago, when Sarah and the boys died, you were hollow, like something had scooped out your insides and left just the shell. I tried to help, but you pushed everyone away. Wasn't fit company for anyone." "And now?" Cole thought about Emma, about the way she looked at him with trust and hope, about how her presence had forced him to care again, to feel again, even when feeling hurt like a fresh wound. "Now I've got a reason to be more than just alive." Grant nodded. "She's good for you. I can see it. I'm not her father. Maybe not by blood, but the way she looks at you, that's a daughter looking at her pa." The words settled over Cole like a weight and a gift at the same time. He'd buried his sons, had sworn he'd never be a father again. But somewhere between finding Emma under that tree and teaching her to read tracts by firelight, he'd become exactly that, a father again. And this time, he wouldn't fail. They reached the canyon as the sun climbed toward noon. Grant signaled for quiet, and they dismounted, tying their horses in a grove of aspen where they'd be hidden. The mine entrance was visible below, a dark mouth cut into the hillside with several rough buildings clustered around it. Smoke rose from a chimney. Voices carried on the wind, young voices, high and scared. Children. Cole's jaw tightened. Grant pulled out a small telescope and scanned the area. "I count 8 kids outside," Grant murmured, "and I can hear more voices from inside the mine shaft. Could be 15, maybe 20 total. All working, carrying rocks, sorting ore, 2 adult guards visible, probably more inside. We can't just charge in. No, we need documentation first. Proof." Grant produced a camera from his saddlebag, one of the new portable kinds that investigators used. "I'm going to get as close as I can, take photographs. You cover me. If they see you, they won't." Grant moved like smoke, silent and low, working his way down the hillside using every bit of cover. Cole stayed back, rifle ready, watching the guards. They were lazy, bored, passing a bottle between them. Not expecting trouble. That would change soon enough. Grant reached a position behind a boulder and began taking photographs. The click of the shutter sounded impossibly loud to Cole's ears, but the guards didn't notice. They were too busy drinking. Then one of the children, a boy, maybe 12 years old, looked up. His eyes met Cole's across the distance. The boy's face was gaunt, his arms covered in bruises, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent. The boy's gaze shifted to Grant, then back to Cole. Understanding flickered across his features. He knew what was happening, knew these men were different from the usual visitors. Instead of raising an alarm, the boy deliberately dropped the rock he was carrying. It crashed loudly, drawing both guards' attention toward him and away from where Grant was working. "Clumsy fool!" one guard shouted, moving toward the boy with his hand raised to strike. The boy took the blow without crying out, his eyes never leaving Cole's. In that moment, Cole saw the same thing he'd seen in Emma. A child who'd learned that survival meant silence, that hope was dangerous, that adults brought pain more often than help. But this boy was still hoping, still betting on the chance that these strangers might be different. Grant finished his photographs and signaled. They withdrew slowly, carefully, back to where the horses waited. Only when they were a safe distance away did either of them speak. "That boy," Cole said. "He covered for us. Brave kid. They're all brave, lasting in a place like that." Grant's face was hard. "I got what we need. Photographs showing children in forced labor. That's federal crime. Enough to arrest Dane and everyone working with him. What about Judge Blackwood? He's the one who made it legal. I'll deal with Blackwood, but first we need to get those kids out." They rode back faster than they'd come, pushing their horses hard. The plan was forming as they moved. Grant would ride to the territorial capital, file federal charges, and return with enough men to raid the mine properly. Cole would keep Emma safe until then. But plans, as Cole knew from his cavalry days, rarely survived contact with the enemy. They were an hour from Cole's cabin when they saw the smoke, black smoke, thick and oily, rising from where the cabin should be. Cole's heart stopped. He kicked Maverick into a full gallop, Grant right behind him. The horse flew over the ground, fear lending him speed he shouldn't have had after the long ride. The cabin came into view, and Cole's worst nightmare materialized. Fire. The cabin was burning, flames licking through the roof, smoke pouring from the windows. Gideon's horse was gone, hoofprints leading toward town through the ash. The barn doors were open, Maverick's stall empty. And there, in the center of the chaos, stood Emma. She was on the ground 20 feet from the burning cabin, crawling toward the barn, her dress torn and dirty. Blood streaked her face from a cut above her eye. Behind her, the cabin's roof collapsed inward with a roar of sparks and flame. Cole was off his horse before it stopped moving. "Emma!" She looked up, her face transforming from despair to desperate relief. "Cole! They took Gideon. They took him, and they said they'd kill him if you didn't give me up." Cole reached her and gathered her into his arms. She was shaking, sobbing, clinging to him like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. Where did they take him?" "Town. The courthouse. That man, Dane, he had so many men with him. They said you have until sunset to bring me or Gideon dies." Grant knelt beside them, his face grim. "How long ago?" "Maybe an hour. They set the fire to make sure you'd see it, to make sure you'd know they were serious." Cole looked at his burning cabin, at everything he owned going up in smoke. None of it mattered. Things were just things. But Gideon was his friend, the only friend he had left, and they were using him as bait. "It's a trap," Grant said quietly. "They want you to come in angry and scared, want you to make mistakes. I know. If you go into that courthouse, they'll arrest you or kill you. Either way, Emma ends up with Dane." Cole looked down at Emma, at her terrified face. He thought about the boy at the mine, taking a beating to cover for them. Thought about all those children trapped in darkness, hoping someone would save them. Thought about his own sons, buried in the ground, their lives cut short by violence he couldn't prevent. "Then we don't go in angry and scared," Cole said. "We go in smart. And we end this today." Grant's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Blackwood wants this to look legal, wants witnesses to see me refuse a court order, resist arrest, wants to paint himself as the lawman and me as the criminal. So we give him what he wants, sort of." "Exactly." They worked out the details quickly. It was risky, maybe suicidal, but it was the only play they had. Cole would ride into town with Emma, just as demanded. But Grant would go in separately, through the back with his federal authority and his photographs. "Timing has to be perfect," Grant said. "If I move too soon, they'll see it coming. Too late and you're dead." "I trust you." "Don't. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. They've kept you alive this long." Cole turned to Emma. "I need you to do something very hard." "What?" "I need you to be brave. Braver than you've ever been. We're going to ride into town, and you're going to see some bad men. They're going to say things, do things, try to scare you, but you have to remember something." "What?" "I'm your father now, and a father protects his daughter, no matter what." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You mean it? I'm really your daughter?" "From the moment I picked you up under that tree, I just didn't know it yet." She hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Pa." The word hit Cole like a physical blow. Pa, not Mr. Brennan, not Cole, Pa. "I love you too, Emma Grace, and I promise you, we're going home tonight. Both of us." They left the burning cabin behind. Grant split off a mile from town, circling wide to approach from the east. Cole rode straight down the main street. Emma held carefully in front of him, her small body pressed against his chest. People stopped and stared. Word had already spread. Everyone knew about the ultimatum, about the fire, about the showdown that was coming. The courthouse stood at the end of the street, a two-story building that served as both legal center and jail. Sheriff Wade waited on the steps, along with 6 deputies. Behind them, visible through the windows, Cole could see Judge Silas Blackwood in his robes, looking every inch the righteous authority. And chained to a post like an animal was Gideon. The old rancher's face was bruised, blood crusting at his hairline, but his eyes were clear and defiant. When he saw Cole, he shook his head sharply. "Don't do it. Don't trade yourself for me." Cole dismounted and helped Emma down. She leaned against Maverick's side, her twisted legs unable to support her weight. Sheriff Wade stepped forward. "Smart man, Brennan. Saves us all a lot of trouble. Let Gideon go first." "That's not how this works. You hand over the girl, then we talk about your friend. I hand over Emma, and you've got no reason to keep your word." Wade's hand moved toward his gun. "I could just take her. You could try. But I'm betting I'm faster than you, and I'm betting at least 3 of your men die before you drop me. You want to take that bet?" Wade's face flushed red. Around them, townspeople were gathering, watching. This was the show Blackwood wanted. Public defiance, justification for whatever came next. The courthouse door opened, and Cyrus Dane emerged, his smile wide and victorious. "Mr. Brennan, how kind of you to see reason. If you'll just hand Emma over to me, we can resolve this peacefully." Cole's hand hovered near his Colt. "Over my dead body." "That can certainly be arranged." Dane's smile didn't waver. "Sheriff Wade, arrest this man for kidnapping and assault." "On what evidence?" A new voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned. Marshal Thaddeus Grant stood at the far end of the street, his silver star gleaming in the afternoon sun. He held a sheaf of papers in one hand and his revolver in the other. "Who the hell are you?" Blackwood's voice boomed from the courthouse steps. "U.S. Marshal Thaddeus Grant. And you're Judge Silas Blackwood, correct? The man who signed the guardianship papers for Mr. Dane here?" "I am. And you have no jurisdiction in my territory." "Actually, I do, when territorial matters become federal crimes." Grant held up the papers. "I have here documented evidence of child trafficking, forced labor, and conspiracy, federal charges, which means everyone involved is under federal arrest." "That's preposterous," Dane sputtered. "I run a charitable organization. You run a labor camp. I have photographs, witness statements, financial records showing payments to Judge Blackwood and Sheriff Wade." Grant's voice carried across the gathering crowd. "You've been buying children and selling them to mine operations. That's slavery, and it's been illegal for 13 years. Blackwood's face went white, then red. "Those records are sealed. How did you—" "Federal warrant. Executed 2 hours ago at the Territorial Bank." Grant stepped forward. "Now, I can arrest everyone involved quietly, or we can do this the hard way. Your choice." The moment hung suspended. Cole could see Wade's deputies exchanging glances, uncertainty clear on their faces. They'd signed up to enforce local law, not participate in federal crimes. Then Dane made his move. He lunged for Emma, grabbing her arm and yanking her toward him. "The girl is mine, legal and proper," Emma screamed. Cole's hand dropped to his Colt, muscle memory taking over. He drew and fired in one smooth motion. The bullet hit Dane's shoulder, spinning him around. He released Emma and stumbled back, shock and pain washing over his face. Wade drew his weapon, so did his deputies. Grant's revolver came up, targeting Wade, and in the chaos, Judge Blackwood pulled a small derringer from his robes and aimed it directly at Emma. Time seemed to slow. Cole saw the judge's finger tightening on the trigger, saw Emma frozen in terror, saw the crowd scrambling for cover. He threw himself forward, his body covering Emma's, just as the derringer fired. The bullet hit Cole in the upper shoulder, punching through meat and muscle. Pain exploded through him, white and hot, but he stayed on his feet, turned, raised his Colt. "Cole, no!" Grant's voice. But Cole wasn't aiming at Blackwood. He was aiming at the ceiling above the judge's head. He fired twice. The bullets shattered the chandelier chain. 100 pounds of iron and glass crashed down, and Blackwood dove aside, his derringer clattering away. Grant's voice rang out, commanding and absolute. "Federal Marshal, everyone on the ground, now!" The fight went out of Wade's deputies all at once. They dropped their weapons, hands raised. Wade himself looked at Grant, at the star, at the crowd of witnesses, and slowly, carefully set his gun down. Dane was on his knees, clutching his bleeding shoulder, moaning. Blackwood lay under broken glass, his robes torn, his authority shattered as completely as the chandelier. Cole sank to the ground beside Emma, his hand pressed to his chest. Blood seeped between his fingers, warm and wet. "Pa!" Emma's voice, terrified and small. "I'm all right. Just a scratch." He tried to smile, but the pain was enormous. His vision swam. Doc Morrison appeared from somewhere in the crowd, his bag already open. "Get him inside, quickly." Strong hands lifted Cole. They carried him into the courthouse, laying him on a table. Emma crawled after them, refusing to leave his side. "You promised," she sobbed. "You promised we'd both go home." "And we will." Cole's voice was weak. "Just need to rest a bit first." Doc Morrison cut away his shirt, exposing the wound. "Bullet went clean through. Missed the lung by inches. You're a lucky man, Cole Brennan. Don't feel lucky. You're alive. That's lucky enough." Through the haze of pain, Cole heard Grant's voice, formal and official. "Cyrus Dane, Judge Silas Blackwood, Sheriff Thomas Wade, you are all under arrest for conspiracy, child trafficking, and corruption of office. Federal charges. You'll be transported to Denver for trial." "You can't do this," Blackwood protested. "I'm a territorial judge." "You were a territorial judge, now you're a criminal, and you're going to spend the rest of your life paying for what you've done to those children." Cole felt Emma's hand gripping his. Her tears fell on his chest, mixing with the blood. He wanted to tell her to stop crying, that everything would be fine, but the darkness was pulling at him, and he was so tired. "Pa, don't leave me. Please don't leave me." "Never," he whispered. "I promise." And then the darkness took him. Cole woke to sunlight and silence. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then pain flared in his chest, and he knew he was very much alive. He was in a bed, a real bed with clean sheets and a soft pillow. The room was unfamiliar, but the smell of medicine and carbolic told him he was in Doc Morrison's clinic. "Pa?" Emma sat in a chair beside the bed, her face pale but hopeful. When she saw his eyes open, joy flooded her features. "You're awake. Doc said you would be, but it's been 3 days, and I was so scared." "3 days?" Cole's voice was rough, his throat dry. Emma helped him drink water from a cup. "You lost a lot of blood. Doc said another inch, and the bullet would have killed you. But you're strong. Stronger than anyone knew." Memory came flooding back. The courthouse, the gunfight, Blackwood's derringer. What happened after? Marshal Grant arrested everyone. Dane, Blackwood, the sheriff, 6 other men who were working at the mine. They're all in the territorial jail waiting for trial. Emma's smile was fierce. And Marshal Grant raided the mine. He got all the children out, 17 of them. They're safe now. And Gideon? He's fine. Bruised and angry, but fine. He's been here every day sitting with you when I had to sleep. Cole closed his eyes, relief washing over him. They'd done it. Against everything, against all odds, they'd actually done it. "There's more," Emma said quietly. "Rebecca came by yesterday. She said the territorial governor is launching a full investigation. They've found records of almost 60 children sold over 3 years. Families are coming forward now, wanting their kids back. That's good. And Marshal Grant said he'll testify that you acted in defense of a federal witness. You're not going to be charged with anything." "Even better." Emma was quiet for a moment. "The cabin burned down. I know. Everything you owned. Just things, Emma. Things can be replaced. But where will we live?" Cole opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. This girl who'd been abandoned, sold, abused, and yet still had the strength to care about where they'd live. Gideon offered us his place until we rebuild, said he's got room, and it gets lonely anyway. Cole reached for her hand. But that's assuming you want to stay with me, officially, legal and proper. Emma's eyes widened. You mean it? Marshall Grant's helping me file adoption papers. Proper ones, not the kind Dane used. You'll be Emma Grace Brennan, my daughter, if that's what you want. She launched herself at him, careful of his wound but unable to contain her joy. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Cole held her as best he could with one arm, feeling pieces of his broken heart finally starting to heal. The next weeks passed in a blur of recovery and rebuilding. Gideon's ranch became home, a larger place with room for both of them. Emma flourished there, learning to help with chores, making friends with the neighbors who came by to check on Cole. True to his word, Grant helped process the adoption. The papers were filed in Denver, far from Blackwood's corrupted court. Emma Grace Brennan became official in the eyes of the law. Cole healed slowly. The bullet wound left a scar, but Doc Morrison said he'd been lucky. Another inch and Emma would have been orphaned again, but she wasn't. And Cole had a daughter, a real daughter, bound not by blood but by choice and love and the decision to save each other. 8 months after the courthouse shooting, Cole stood in Gideon's barn working on a special project. The modified saddle was nearly finished, designed specifically for Emma's needs. Straps to hold her secure, support for her twisted legs, everything she'd need to ride safely. Emma watched from her wheelchair, another gift from Grant, her eyes bright with excitement. When can I try it? Soon. Want to make sure it's perfect first. It's already perfect. Cole smiled. You say that about everything. Because everything is perfect. I have a pa who loves me, a home, friends. Everything I never thought I'd have. She was right. It was perfect. Not the life Cole had planned, not the life he'd lost, but a new life, built from ashes and hope, and one simple decision to stop instead of riding past. That evening, they tried the saddle on Maverick. Cole lifted Emma up carefully, settling her into the modified seat. She gripped the horn, her face a mixture of terror and joy. Ready? Cole asked. Ready. He led Maverick around the corral slowly, one hand on the reins, the other ready to catch Emma if she slipped. But she didn't slip. She sat tall, her balance perfect, her smile wide enough to split her face. I'm riding, Pa, I'm really riding. Cole watched her, this girl who'd been left to die, now sitting proud on a horse, laughing with pure joy. And for the first time in 8 years, Cole felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Not hope that the past could be changed. Not hope that grief would disappear, but hope that the future could be something worth living for, worth fighting for, worth building from nothing but determination and love. 3 months later, Cole stood before a judge in Denver. Not Blackwood, who was serving 20 years in federal prison. A real judge, honest and fair. Mr. Brennan, the adoption papers are in order. Emma Grace is legally your daughter in every sense of the word. The judge smiled. Congratulations to you both. Emma squeezed Cole's hand. We did it, Pa. We did. They walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. Marshall Grant waited outside along with Gideon, Doc Morrison, and Rebecca Chen. Friends who'd stood with them when standing meant risking everything. What now? Grant asked. Cole looked down at Emma, at his daughter, at this miracle who'd saved his life by letting him save hers. Now we go home, he said simply. And they did. The new cabin rose from the ashes of the old one, bigger and better. Emma had her own room, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the mountains. Cole worked the ranch, building it back up, and Emma helped however she could. She learned to ride well enough to work cattle from horseback, learned to rope and brand, and do a dozen other things that supposedly required working legs. She proved, over and over, that disability was just another challenge to overcome, not a limit on what was possible. On quiet evenings, they'd sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the mountains gold. Cole would tell stories about his cavalry days, carefully editing out the worst parts. Emma would talk about the future, about maybe becoming a teacher like Rebecca, about helping other children who'd been abandoned or abused. "You saved me," she said one evening. "Now I want to save others." "You already have," Cole told her. "You saved me first." 1 year after the courthouse shooting, Cole and Emma rode together to 3 graves behind the cabin. Sarah, Tommy, James. The crosses were weathered, the wood gray with age. Cole had avoided this spot for years, but today felt right. Today felt like closure. "I brought someone to meet you," he said to the graves. He helped Emma down from her horse, and she stood beside him, leaning on her crutch. "This is Emma, my daughter, not by blood but by choice. She's brave and smart and kind, and I think you would have loved her." His voice caught. "I hope wherever you are, you understand why I moved on, why I let myself love again. It doesn't mean I've forgotten you, just means I remembered how to live." Emma placed wildflowers on each grave. "I wish I could have known you," she said softly. "Your husband, your father, he's the best man I've ever known. Thank you for making him who he is." They stood in silence for a while, the wind moving through the grass, the sun warm on their faces. Finally, Cole helped Emma back onto her horse. As they rode toward home, Emma looked back at the graves one last time. "They'd be proud of you, Pa. They'd be proud of both of us." And in the sunset light, with his daughter beside him and hope in his heart, Cole Brennan finally understood what it meant to be whole again. Not because the pain was gone, not because the past was forgotten, but because he'd found the courage to build something new from the ruins of what was lost. One girl, one choice, one stop on a lonely trail. That was all it took to save 2 lives and prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to ride past someone in need, even when stopping might cost you everything, especially then. The end.